So I'm John Widger. I've been here for quite a while now. Sometimes I feel like a new person here, that I have not been a long timer, but in reality, I've been here for quite a while. Again, why did I start going to church in the first place? Again, a lot of it was background, the way I was raised. Again, my parents were very active in church, very religious people. My grandfather was also active in church. My mom was in the choir, helped out with Luther League when I was old enough to be in Luther League. I'm sure she did some stuff with teaching in the Sunday school. My dad was Sunday school superintendent. He was active in Lutheran Brotherhood and various committees around the church. So basically, I grew up thinking that church was the thing to do. Again, church was as much part of growing up as school and sports and music and stuff like that. Basically, church was always there, and I can't. There was very little reason that you did not go to church. So basically, I grew up that way, and I think I got off to a very good start with their influence. When I went to college, I was fortunate enough to find that there was a Lutheran church right across the street from my first dorm. And I went to church pretty regularly for my first couple of years in college. And again, I didn't notice a lot of my classmates going to church or hear that they went to church. So again, I think the way I was raised, I wanted to continue that. And then we came to a little bit of a bleak spot. And basically, I sort of dropped off the face of the earth in regards to church for probably close to 15 years. And again, I'm not sure how I did it because, again, it was so much a part of me, but I was incredibly angry. And I don't know if I was angry at God or if I was angry at myself. Again, you often talk about people getting mad because God doesn't answer prayers. And I got mad because he did. Basically, my mother was diagnosed with a rapidly progressive breast cancer back before we knew very little about how to take care of breast cancer in the mid-70s. And basically, she was dead within 2 years of her diagnosis. And it was obvious to me that this was not something she was going to survive. So I actually prayed, and I prayed that God's will be done, and if she couldn't be healed, that he'd take her home. And he did. And then I got mad, and I thought I still don't know if I was mad at God or if I was mad at myself for praying about that. So basically, at that point, I continued. I continued at least going to church for maybe another year or so after that, I think. But again, I sort of again, there was a church there at Albright that I went to, but again, I wasn't really a real active member there. And then the next year I went to school in Philadelphia, and when I moved to Philadelphia, it really became easy for me not to go to church. I looked around, and as I was thinking about this discussion, I was starting to think, well, geez, how many times did I go to church? And I can remember going to one of the Presbyterian churches in Philly a couple times, and then we moved out to Lansdowne. And there's a nice little church in Lansdowne, a Lutheran church that I went to a couple times. But I really don't know if I went, I was not really a regular churchgoer at that point in time. So basically, I just drifted along. I don't think I lost my faith, but I certainly wasn't putting it into practice, and I certainly wasn't attending church. So basically, I was just out of there, just sort of floating on. And then I came back to town, and we moved to Mifflinville, and I started in practice here. And again, finding a church was really not something I was looking for. Basically, my wife is a Catholic, and she was born and raised here in Berwick, so she came back to St. Mary's. And I would go to Christmas and Easter masses at times. But again, I really wasn't looking at for anything. If I had been, I could have gone back to my church in Catawissa. I still nominally belong there. And there's a Lutheran church right down the street from me in Mifflinville. So, what happened? And it was just very simple. Marilee said, "Hey, why don't you come to church someday?" And I have no clue. And and since you threw the question out there, I still have no clue why she invited me to church. She worked in the OR with me. She was one of our OR nurses at Blum. And I'm not sure how it came up in conversation, but she said, "Why don't you come to church at Good Shepherd someday?" And I was, well, okay. So I just showed up here. And I got here as a family. Basically I walked in and I was accepted from the moment I got here. Again, a couple of people said to Marilee, "He's obviously Lutheran. He knows what's going on with the service here. Where did you find this guy?" And I was accepted very, very quickly, and discovered Ron Garrison. I don't know if you know any church history. Ron Garrison was an active member here. Ron Garrison was my high school basketball coach and a good friend of my mother's. So basically, Ron was here and Marilee, and I got to meet Jackie and all the people of that generation. And, basically I felt like I was home. I found something that, I'd walked away from myself for 15 years, and it was like I never missed a beat when I got here. Again, I started coming on a very regular basis. John Coons got here and started getting the congregation more involved in the lay ministry and everything, and he asked me to be an assisting minister. And again, it's I look back at the years I was away from the church and wonder, why? Well, why is I was angry. But again, I just can't believe that it took me so long to find my way back. And it was just this simple invitation from Marilee, which I'm eternally grateful for. And why do I keep coming back? And again, we all have things that we don't like that's happened to in our past and we wish we could change, etc. But God's been good to me. Again, basically, I'm here to thank Him for my salvation, for sharing the good news with a congregation of friends, and the chance to worship here. Again, I still don't know if I was more mad at God than myself. Ron was one of the first ones that heard that when I got back here. Ron was quite a guy, and he said, "Well, how come you're coming to church here?" And I said, "Well, I got to tell you, I didn't go to church for years, and when you're 20 or 21, your mother disappears out of your life. It's a little bit difficult at times. So,
to say the very least.
But again, I've got so much to be thankful for. Again, basically." And again, I don't know how much more of my past history that you may or may not know. My wife, certainly, my wife had a medical issue that most people do not survive. And if they survive, they're usually very impaired. She had a cerebral aneurysm. And
Oh my goodness.
Again, smart guy here missed the diagnosis, but basically she survived without any sequelae. And again, I've got so much to be thankful for. So, I've had a great career. I haven't had any major disasters, and I always find new things to do. And again, I'm thankful that we've got you here to lead us. Again, I've been very thrilled with your leadership. I've always been thrilled with the chance to be involved. Again, sometimes I tell myself I need to be more involved. But again, if you'd asked me if I'd stand in the choir with a guitar a year ago, I would have said you're crazy. I was nowhere ready to take my show on the road.
Now, not only are you assisting minister and council vice president, but a leader musically and a leader spiritually.
Well, again, music has been my other. Again, if anything has kept me sane, it's been music. And again, that goes back to my mom. So what else do we need to talk about?
I think that's perfect. Well, thanks for being willing to do this. This is fun. You're our first one.
Oh, I'm the guinea pig.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it a lot since you threw it out. So.
Have you really?
Yeah. Again, that gives me something to think about while I'm riding my bike. I've got downtime.
Your e-bike.
Yeah, got it fixed finally. Well, it didn't take too long to fix it. I was a little bit hesitant, but it's running well now, so I'm having a good time with it. So
good. I'm glad it's running well too. That those things are finicky, inexpensive. My goodness.
Yeah. I was a little upset. You know, I put 80 miles on it, and all of a sudden, like boom, it was done. And it took them about 2.5 weeks or so to get me the replacement part. And I was a little bit hesitant about doing a wiring harness and a controller on it, but it actually wasn't too bad. It was just losing a couple bolts, plugging a couple things in, and it took care of the problem. I've got another 400 miles on it since I did it, so I'm in good shape.
400 since you've done it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I generally do 10 to 15 miles a day.
Where are you pedaling around at?
I just pretty much just around Mifflinville. You know, sometimes I'll take a little further trip, but again, I'll generally go down to. I live up on the upper side of Mifflin, so I come down to the main road and I'll ride up 339 to where the construction is, turn around and go back into town, and then I'll come across the river bridge and go back across the river bridge, and then I'll just make loops around the back streets of Mifflinville for an hour and a half.